Hello, welcome to the June 23rd, 2023 Club Cubase livestream. My name is Greg Undo and I'll be the host of the livestream today. If you have not attended a livestream before, how it works is you can ask questions in the live chat field, or you could send questions in advance to clubcubase@steinberg.de. So once again, clubcubase@steinberg.de. When asking questions, realize that my ability to answer all questions in a real-time manner will soon be eclipsed as more people join and we get questions kind of stacked up. I will try to go through all the questions chronologically as they're asked. So if you don't see an immediate response to your question, if we could avoid asking the same question over and over again, that would be appreciated. When asking questions, if you want to specify which version of Cubase that you're running, which level. So if it's Cubase LE, AI, Elements, Artist, or Pro, or other Steinberg programs, which version number, so if it's 10, 10.5, 11, or 12, and which operating system. That information is often helpful. And we should have all the topics that are discussed in today's live stream pinned to the top of the comments field several hours after the live stream completes. I had to basically go back and watch the live stream and type up all the questions that were asked. And you could search and navigate directly to particular topics from today's stream. And if you wanted to search for topics that have been covered, I think we're over 26,500 questions or so. But if you wanted to search for topics that have been covered in previous live streams, you could go to cubaseindex.com. We want to thank Jan from Stockholm for creating cubaseindex.com, so you could just kind of search a particular topic. We also want to give special thanks to Agent K and to Jazz Dude for all their work serving as moderators. They're not Steinberg employees. They just do this to make it a better environment for the community. We appreciate that so much. And we also want to give a kudos to Jazz Dude for his work with the Cubase Nation Discord, which is a wonderful collection of utilities and links that are really relevant and pertinent to the Steinberg community. And it's a lot of time and effort goes into that. As I said before, my name is Greg Undo. I work for Yamaha Corporation of America, which is the United States distributor of Steinberg products. And I'm the host of the live stream. I'm presenting from outside the Washington, D.C. area in the United States in Alexandria, Virginia. And if you are watching the live stream live, please introduce yourself, tell us where you're from, and say hi, and we'll go ahead and get started answering questions. All right, so we see Uno Momento from Finland. It says that they're celebrating midsummer here in Finland. He's just going to press the like button. He's going to try to pop in later. Wishes everyone a nice weekend. All right, wonderful to see Ted Springman from Los Angeles on. He says we're in Los Angeles. They've had a long rainy season. See, Ted Springman also just says just upgraded to Spectral Layers 10. First test will be extracting vocals on a mono Beatles song and then placing Lennon and McCartney on their own sample layers. This is freaking amazing. So it's pretty. I just have been playing around with Spectral Layers 10 the last couple of days. It is pretty amazing. So excuse me. Sorry, I had to sneeze. All right, so we have a question. Hi, Greg and everyone. Hope you're having a nice day. I wonder if it's possible to assign a key command to open the sample track in a separate window. I tried to do this, but I couldn't. So I don't think that it will go directly to a separate window by default. Because the sampler track was designed to have the content here. So if it's in the lower zone, there is this particular function where we could open in the separate window. So let's go to our key commands. So I think I have this set for so we'll just say open in separate window. All right, so I think I assigned this particular key command, but I assigned it command option shift plus up. So, the other editor windows had started off as separate windows and then migrated down to a down to the lower zone, whereas the sampler track was always in the lower zone. But if you just simply have a sampler track selected, you could assign your own keyboard shortcut to feed it into a separate window as well. So all you have to do again is just come over here and go to the key commands, and we'll see kind of so we'll come again to key commands, and you'll see open in separate window, and then you could do that. So, but since the sampler track was never in as a external window, that's why it's always kind of starts from the from the lower zone, and then you could use the key command to get it open and closed. So it's kind of a two-step process. All right, so we see Ted Springman talking about Spectral Layers. Just says also to isolate drums and separate kick, snare, hi-hat to 3 layers. Very cool indeed. Remixing with alternate effects will be too tempting long after the final mix is there. Might lead to paralysis by analysis, though. Yeah, so if you haven't seen this function in Spectral Layers, let's say if we have a drum loop here, we'll just show this for the benefit of our people. So let's say I want to take that, we could open this into Spectral Layers. So let's say I want to take my cymbals, my kick, and hi-hat. So now when we double click, we could just go to under the unmix, and we could choose drums. And then I just did this just a minute ago, but now if I wanted to say, as we play this loop, if I wanted to mute just the kicks, or mute the snare, or solo snare. So this could separate. So that way you could take like drums that are all mixed together and be able to separate them into like kick, snare, and cymbals and hi-hats. So it's a pretty amazing new thing, and that's new in Spectral Layers 10, which is just released yesterday. All right, so let's move on. All right, so we see Jazz Dude is on. We see Cubase Index, Jan from Stockholm, and we missed you on Tuesday's live stream, but it's wonderful to have you back. And just a quick note, in July, the first live stream in July will be July 4th, which is a holiday in the United States. And I just wanted to throw it out if people were okay to move the live stream to July 3rd for that week. So let me know if July 3rd would be okay so we could get 2 live streams in that week. So just leave a comment in the comments field, and if that's fine with everyone, we will go ahead and do that. Okay. Okay, so we see from John Costigan says, I downloaded the Halion 7 update and Tails, but I'm unable to activate Tails. Any suggestions? So, make sure that you're running it inside of Halion Sonic. I think it needs Halion Sonic 7 or Halion Sonic SE. But let me just take a look at my Steinberg activation manager here and see if Tail shows up separately, if it's just part of the license. go to my download manager and we'll just check. We're just down into download assistant. Yeah, so if you have tails, you should see it. So the license should be activated directly with the Halion 7 license. So it's part of the Halion 7. So, check also in your Steinberg library manager. So if you wanted to look at your Steinberg library manager here and look under your Halion content, and you should see if tails is listed here. If not, wherever the tails download is, double click on it, and that should automatically have it recognized by Cubase and by Halion. So make sure that you see it in the Steinberg library manager and that you actually downloaded it here as well. But the license, if you just get a license not activated, make sure that you downloaded it directly. And make sure you downloaded it from the Halion 7, because I think you could buy it separately as a program. So that separate download may be a different license. So I'll come look at the download assistant again. Because if you wanted to run it in Halion Sonic 7, you could purchase the license for tails, I think, independently. But if you have Halion 7 and you installed it from Halion 7, I think the tails may automatically just kind of be part of the license there. So we'll just check. Yeah, so make sure you didn't download this tails, but that you downloaded when you go to Halion 7. That you downloaded this tails and this FM Lab. So that could give you a licensing issue there, John. And it's great to see you on. And John's from Kenosha, Wisconsin. All right, so we have VQT Piano just saying hi. Thanks for joining us today. All right, so we see Michael Pierce is on from London area, and he's shelling fava beans while Club Cubase is in the background. So thanks for joining. All right, so we see that Soren is from Sweden, is on his holiday midsummer, so he's busy with family time tonight. We'll miss you, and thanks for popping in. Just make sure you hit the like button. All right. Okay, so we see just a question from MK Production. Hello, I want to know the best why to change WAV file. So let me know how you want a WAV file to be changed. So, with obviously you could do, different editing for WAV files inside of Cubase, but let me know if it's, we say the best why to change. I assume maybe it's best way to change WAV file. But let me know how you want to change the WAV file. So if you wanted to cut, we could come over here, we could cut, we could erase, we could adjust the volume, we could make it fade out. So there's lots of different processing that we could do. So if we get to our audio menu, I could now come over and, like, if I wanted to reverse the audio, we could do stuff like that. So there's a number of different ways of changing the WAV file and editing the WAV file. But if you want to know something specific, just feel free to let me know. All right, so wonderful to see Robbie Bowling. All right, from Dallas, Texas. All right, so we have Michael Romanowski from Coast Mastering. It says, howdy, Greg and WaveLab. Can you explain how to auto-put CD track markers on one track only? For example, not from the reference track or other alternate. Okay, so let's take a look. Sorry about this. Let me just... Okay, so I'm going to come over and we'll just create empty. I'm going to start with a new montage. And then while it's empty, I'm going to go to CD and let's go to functions and we will go to our CD wizard. Okay. Okay. Let me just put in some audio tracks here. I'll just put in some separate files to start with here. Okay, so I'm going to put these on one single track. Okay, so I have these files. Let me go to my functions and we'll choose our CD wizard. And then I'll just click apply. So this has now put all the CD markers in. And let's say at this point I wanted to add a reference track. So we see that this, my CD list hasn't been affected by the reference track. So let me know if you added a particular reference track, Michael. So, and if you're using the reference track, But as we can see, that when we added the reference track, that my songs here weren't affected in the PQ list for the CD. So let me know if that's helpful for you, Michael. Wonderful to see you on the live stream, as always. All right, so we have Imad Salsa just saying hello. All right, so we see from Michael just in question, can you take the markers from one montage and copy them to another montage, keeping audio independent? Okay, so let's try it real quick. Let's do a new montage again here. Okay, so you want to keep the markers the same. All right, let's see. So it's just I may have to play with this a little bit and get back to you, Michael. I don't know a way of doing it off the top of my head. But there is kind of the replace audio file. So if you wanted to take this and, you know, maybe replace it with a different file, like if you had alternate takes. But I'll play with it some more and see if there's a way that I could find to just to, you know, extract the markers without the, you know, just to take the markers from one montage and apply it. So, you know, let me know if, like, when I sent you the video for last time, if that was helpful. All right, before I close WaveLab, we'll make sure there's not a WaveLab question next. All right, we'll just all right, so VQT is just saying hello from California. Treble and bass says, what's the difference between Logic and Cubase? So I think you will find that Cubase generally, you know, they're both DAWs, like digital audio workstations. But I think that you'll find that, you know, Cubase generally has the feature sets first that are copied by many other programs. And Cubase is available for Mac and PC, and I think you get a lot more instruments, and it's kind of more updated than and probably more professional solution than other tools. But I don't run Logic, so I don't, you know, but I help lots of people to switch from Logic to Cubase. All right, so we see Stefan saying hello from Sweden. All right, so we have Naim Gary says, can you request an easier strum tool for Cubase 13? So one of the things that people often miss, and we'll just in case you didn't know this, let's say if I take some chords and I'll drag it down. If you want to do some strumming, so a lot of people may not know that if you just grab the trim tool and kind of hold down the Alt or Option key, that you could just kind of do kind of different strumming patterns like so if you wanted to. So make sure you do that, but I will kind of, you know, if you hold down the other modifier key, so if you just hold down kind of your Alt Option key, you can just choose how much you want, like, to simulate kind of a guitar strum. So you can do it that way as well. So a lot of people don't know that, but you know, a request I know that's been asked before. All right, so we have Sam Phillips checking in, watching from Nashville. Thanks for joining us today. Okay, VQT Piano says, I'm new to Cubase. My questions are how to copy and paste one track or the whole selection. So if you want to, let's say we have a track here and we want to copy and paste. So if you want to do it on the timeline, you can, you know, just hit like Command C to copy, move the cursor and paste. Another way of doing it is just to hold it down. Before releasing the left mouse button as you drag, hold down the Alt or Option key, and then you could just simply, you know, make copies like so. And let me know if that's what you want to do, is copying events on the project window. And we see question how to insert a bar in between a section. Okay, so if we wanted to take this, I'm going to grab my range tool, select this, and we'll go to edit to range. And let's say we just want to insert silence, and then we could move that event over. So what you want to do is just to use the actual range tool to set the amount of time that you want And then you just go to the insert silence function, and there's keyboard shortcuts for this as well. Then all the events will just move over to insert that particular silence. All right, so we see a question, how to transpose one track or a whole section. Okay, so if you wanted to transpose just one track, if it's audio or MIDI, you know, what you could do, so if it's audio, let's say I want to take this, if I selected an info line, so once I have this selected, I could go to my transpose function here. And transpose. And if I wanted to do this kind of globally for a project, we have a dedicated transpose track. I'll show you that quickly. So say we're playing along. So I could right click, let's add a track, and we'll make it transpose. And then say I wanted to go down a step right here. I'll just say, okay, so as I click, that we could just click right here. It's usually, let me just make sure that these are, I'll just try just reloading the project here real quickly. I think I loaded the wrong one. All right, so we'll add our transpose track again. And then you could do this in sections or just come right over here and say, okay, I want to transpose this up. So if I say, okay, let's make this -2 instead, we can now. So you could now just kind of come over here and just use a transpose track and change the audio, and all your audio and MIDI will follow at that point. And thanks for being on the live stream. So glad that you're a new Cubase user. Okay, so we see Waldo Walsh. Hi, is there any news regarding using the PreSonus Faderport with Pro 12? Thanks. So I'm pretty sure it works. I wasn't aware of any issues with it or any changes with it. So I'm not sure if you wanted it to automatically show up in like a MIDI remote device. So it may not be set up for that to be automatically recognized, but as long as it transmits MIDI, you can create your own MIDI remote devices for it. But I believe it will still function the same way. I'm not sure if there's like, driver issues with it that prevent it from working on later operating systems. But I haven't heard of any issues with it. But if you could be more specific, if it's for a MIDI remote, and generally the companies that make the hardware are doing those MIDI remote devices, or users are sharing them freely. All right, so we have Lawrence Koch checking in from Rhode Island, and then he says Spectral Layers 10 is very cool. All right, so we see John Costigan just saying thanks for the tips, Greg. You're welcome. All right, so we have Tokens 2011 just saying sup. All right, we have Avri checking in from Tel Aviv today. Razel Zemini's checking in from Denmark. All right, so Ted Springman asks, so I understand VCA faders can be proportional, but what if the underlying volumes fluctuate? Do you need to normalize all to 0 and then set the faders to desired proportion, or can Cubase do this? All right, so I'll show you just a quick project here. Kind of set up. Okay. All right, so we'll look at kind of our volume automation here. And we'll slide over and we'll look at our drums, and we can see that the drums are, and I kind of purposely did this, where the drums are all going kind of in contrary automation. All right, so if I wanted to take all of my drum tracks here, and we'll select all my drums and we'll include a tambourine. So we see all this automation. I'm going to add a VCA fader to the selected tracks. All right, let's try this again. So let's add the VCA fader. We just all right, let me see if the VCA is added in here. See if we add a group track, see if that works. I'm gonna unlink these first here. Okay, so now let's try adding. Okay, so we have our VCA fader now. Okay, so we have automation going on. Could try a different project here with this. We have create some same drum tracks without, we'll start VCAs from scratch here. Sorry about that. Okay, so when we're doing this, I'm just going to automate some tracks. All right, so say we have so as we come over here, we'll see automation on our tracks. Okay, so and we have automation that's kind of going in contrary motion. So what I'm going to do now is to select these tracks, right click, and let's add a VCA fader to the selected tracks. All right, so if we automate my VCA fader, I will now come over here, and as I bring this down, the tracks that are going up in contrary motion will still go up, but they'll just be kind of attenuated by the VCA level, so we don't have to set everything to 0. So as I bring the track volumes louder, the tracks that are going down will be going down. So this way I could do my automation, and it will be kind of controlled by the VCA. So we automate this. All right, so we can see that as my VCA fader is all right, so I'll just write. So I move it up, you still see tracks going down. And kind of going in opposite motion. And what you have to do to kind of coalesce the automation on a particular track. So if we look at the automation lanes, so even though my VCA is going up, the tracks could still be going down in contrary motion. And we look at our particular tracks here, we could see kind of the original automation plus underlying what it is with the VCA automation. So if I select a particular track here, we could go to like our VCA. So let me just, let's get to our VCA track here. And then we'll see combine the automation. I'll just move this up a little bit, and we'll just say, okay, we want to combine the automation of the VCA and the linked channels. And we can see that that will now go from kind of the automation with the underlying VCA movement to having the VCA automatically take, the result of the changes of the VCA. So even while the VCA fader may be going up, and if the track is going down, you don't have to reset the tracks to 0 to have that work for you. So let me know if that's helpful for you, Ted. All right, so we have looks like the Mateco checking in from Nigeria. Thanks for joining us. All right, so we see from Matt Elder, says, hi Greg, hooked up my Ortone speaker the way you suggested it. When I switch back and forth between them, the Ortone is blaring loud. How do I fix this? So if you wanted to attenuate the levels in the control room, so let's say we have our control room where we could switch between different speakers. All right, so I'm going to go to the monitors, and let's click on where we see inserts. So now when we go to our monitor source here, you could actually just attenuate, and you may have to kind of scroll, but each speaker level could have their own volume source, so that when you go to switch between the different speakers, that you could kind of have consistency between the different you have consistency between the different speakers. So to get to change the volume level of individual speakers, all you have to do is come over here, select the speaker, go to your inserts, and you may have to kind of like come over here, hit close, and open the monitors tab while inserts, and then at the very bottom you could just attenuate the speakers to make sure that those particular speakers can be louder or softer to fit in, so that you can have the consistent monitoring levels between your different tracks. So let me know if that's helpful. Okay. Sorry, I just had an urgent email I have to read real quick. Bear with me just for a second. All right. Okay, so we see VQT piano. I think we covered those questions already. All right, wonderful to see Sable Winters from San Francisco, California, from the Bay Area. All right, so Patrick asks, hi Greg, questions on splitting notes, how to set a macro for cutting and splitting notes according to grid size, 8th, 16th, 32nd, etc. Okay, so I just created a quick macro to do this. So let's say we have a number of notes here. So let's say we have just some whole notes, and I wanted to split each of these notes based on kind of eighth notes. So I created a macro. So let's go take a look at it, and we'll say, okay, let's go to our key commands. Okay, so and my macro is first to change the quantized category, and I set it to set to eighth notes. And then we're going to do transport nudge cursor right, so that will nudge it an eighth note, and then edit to split at cursor. And then we could just simply kind of execute this macro repeatedly. So I'm going to just assign it this particular macro. So again, the 3 steps are the quantized category, set it to the quantized value you want, whether it's 8th or 16th or 32nd, and then nudge the playhead cursor, and then we're going to split at the cursor. So I'm going to assign this particular macro to my nano control here. And I want, we'll take this particular page here, and I'm going to assign it just to key commands, and we'll look under macros, and we'll say split MIDI note by 8th, and we'll assign that macro to this particular key. All right. So now as I come here, we'll make this the active window. And I'll just run a macro here real quick. So we'll say split MIDI, note 8th. I had this working before. All right, just let me. All right, just gonna try a new project here real quick. Sorry about that. Okay, so we have our 3 notes. Let's see if we get the macro to work here. Yeah, so now just triggering that macro again is just splitting each of these by 1/8 notes. So if you have kind of longer notes, I want to make it a little more musically interesting here. So again, just move the playhead cursor, so create the macro. So just to see that. So set the quantized value, nudge the playhead cursor, and then split at cursor from the edit menu. And now you can just keep hitting that function to trigger the macro. And that will split all your long notes into shorter 1/8 notes that you can see. So let me know if that's helpful and what you wanted to do, Patrick. Okay, so you see from Coast Mastering, Michael Romanowski, sorry Greg, that's not it. Start with the reference track and made it another stereo or 2 tracks and auto create the markers only on the first track. Okay. So it's back to WaveLab. Okay, so let's say I have a reference track here. Okay, and now I wanted to put in number of reference, number of tracks here. Put them on the same track. All right, so this file here is Forever Sorry. It's not listed in the PQ codes. It's not listed in the CD tracks here, so I just took that and did so. So you start with the reference track. It says it made it in there. Stereo 2 tracks, then auto create markers only on the first track. So I'll just add a couple of other stereo tracks here. Let's see if I add another, just an audio track. Okay, so now I want to take this track and we'll insert recent audio files. Okay, I'm going to line them up onto the same track. And then, so this track is selected. And we'll go to our CD wizard. Okay, so it looks like this, when it's a stereo track, that will, like this file is included. But let's see if we come and all right, let's see if I just hit. Okay, so I see where now that this track is in there. That's included in the PQ list. So it looks like if it's in the particular let's see what happens if I choose to delete the marker. So it looks like if we delete the marker for the CD, that will get it out of the PQ list. So let me know if that's helpful. There's probably a different way of doing it, but it seems like if we delete the marker, then it's not going to automatically create there. So let's say if we go to our CD wizard again, see if there's an option to exclude. So you could manually do it if you're doing it from the CD wizard, or just remove the CD start marker from that event. So let me know if that's helpful, Michael. All right, so we see from Patrick, Greg, is there any keyboard shortcuts for selecting the offbeat notes inside the key editor? So it's going to be just a like the Midi logical editor. So let's say I wanted to select notes on the upbeats or the offbeats here of. So what we'll do is go to our Midi logical editor. And we want to select okay, so I'm just make sure it wasn't delete, but let's select type is equal to note, and let's choose their position, and we'll say based on bar range. So we'll say inside bar range. And then I'm going to just do that 2 more times, and I'm going to say or, and we want to adjust position for all these. And we'll say inside bar range. All right, so I'll just do like the and of like the second eighth note here of each beat. All right, so I'll just make this 2. And we'll make it precise here. All right, so I'll just get these super precise since we're quantized heavily there. Okay, so if I did this right, now we're going to select every and of beat 1. So let's say make sure I don't have anything selected here. just can check my. Okay, so it looks like that should be set up. All right, let's see if we delete. All right, so basically this would be just want to make sure I have the, so it should be 210. Let me just try changing this value to 3. Okay. So if we set this up to like offbeats, so this will be the offbeat of version of beat 1. So if we just choose to select, we want to say, let's select every upbeat, and then we could just navigate the measure kind of like that. So let me know if that's what you want to do, and I'll just save this as a preset. So once again, you want to set the value to, you want to select notes, and then we'll say in position, inside bar range, and you don't want to say and here. For the Boolean condition, you want it to choose or. So we're going to say we're going to select this 8th note starting on the offbeat of beat 1, the offbeat of beat 2, the offbeat of 3, the offbeat of 4. So now at this point, you just hit apply, and you could select all the downbeats, and if you wanted to take those notes and do something like, okay, now I want to transform, I can say let's take value 2, and I wanted to like maybe kind of we'll add a velocity of 20. So now I could select all those notes and increase their velocity by 20 if you wanted to. So let me know if that's helpful for you, Patrick, if that's what you wanted to do. And then you could save that as a preset and trigger it with key commands or a controller. Okay, my chat field jumped. So we see Michael just saying about the video for the tabbed plugin. So yeah, I think we showed it on the last live stream as well. Sorry, it took me a while to find that. All right. Okay. All right. So the Heartbreak Time Machine wants people to hit the like button. All right. And we have Sable Winters just saying lots of new people today. It's great. Ivory asks, when will you see Cubase 13? So when it's ready. So, we usually don't announce stuff kind of in advance. So, when it's ready, we'll let you know. 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 So, when it's ready, we' just kind of seems like a bad tease. But I can tell you that the teams are working hard, always working hard in doing stuff. All right, so VQT Piano asks, how could I copy and paste the whole project? Okay, so if we have a number of different events in your project, so let's say we have a project like this, and there's lots of different events. So let's say I want to select all. So one of the things you can do is just hit Command or Control D. So Control A to select all, Control or Command A to select all, and then you could just do Control or Command plus the letter D, like duplicate. So that's a way you could kind of copy a whole project. You could also just select all the events, and if we go to the right edge here, just drag it out. So you could take all the projects and drag it out as well. So a couple different ways. All right, wonderful to see Gerald Ely on the live stream from Martinez, California. I'm glad you can make it today. All right, great to see Brian Sawyer from Beulahville, North Carolina. Glad you can make it. So we see with Coast Mastering, Michael, is there a way to import Nuendo key commands into WaveLab? So the two are kind of different programs, as you probably obviously know. So since they are kind of different functions, the key command files aren't compatible. So they're not interchangeable because they're so different. We can take like a Nuendo key command file and, you know, open that into Cubase and vice versa. But since there's so many functions that aren't the same, the WaveLab and Nuendo key commands aren't going to be interchangeable. All right, Gerald Ely wants people to hit the like button and helps keep the stream alive. All right, so we see, hi Greg, is there any way to reorder the instantiated VST instruments in the rack section in the right zone? Let's give it a shot. I don't think, we'll give it a quick try. But is there, you know, a real reason to reorder? So let's say if we do it, I'm going to start with instrument tracks here. So let's say I'll add a backbone. And let's add Groove Agent. So now we go to our VSTI, we see Backbone and Groove Agent. If we switch, you know, so, you know, let me know if there's a particular reason that you want these to be reordered so the tracks can be reordered, and this is just kind of like their destination of where they go to. So most people don't really see the need to reorder these because the tracks can be reordered, and this would still go to, you know, Backbone would still go to this destination. So a lot of people just have this as kind of like a holding cell, if you will, and that the tracks can just be fed there. But if there's a particular reason that you need to reorder, let me know. But it seems like, and even if we go to add racks, so let's say, okay, we'll add a retrolog. And let's add another rack instrument, pad shop. Yeah, so I don't think that these are going to be reorderable, but if there's a particular reason you need it to be reordered, it's going to be kind of added. They'll go top down based on the order of the instruments that were added. If you really wanted to say no instrument track, you could move it up and then add the instrument track below if you needed to reorder. But, most of the time this is just kind of like, almost like a waiting area, for data coming from here. So more people, I think, would, tend to reorder their tracks here, and they don't really care what order their instruments are in. But, let me know if there's a specific reason that you want that. All right, always wonderful to see Mr. Michael Teams from Weatherford, Texas. We hope you're doing well with the heat and seeing all sorts of weather stories from Texas. All right, so we have Pindo Purba just saying hello to everyone. Thanks for joining us today. All right, Michael Teams is already given out ice cream. We have PZ136 on. All right, so we see a question. I'm building a second computer for music production using Cubase. I have two questions, indeed, answers. Two questions need answers. First question is AMD versus Intel. I think either is a good choice. I would get away from the Intel machines that have kind of like hybrid processors where they have, kind of cores that are running slower speeds and other cores that are running at higher speeds. Those have been problematic for a lot of people, as I don't think it's really supported in the operating system. So you may, if you're spending money on that, there's a lot of Ryzen fans. Jazz Dude's a big Ryzen fan. So I think either is a fine choice. But don't get kind of where you have the hybrid CPUs running two different CPU speeds. Avoid that. And then a question on multi-thread performance or single-threaded performance. So most DAW people, I think, go for more traditional. Most people will go for the fastest single core performance and get as many of the fastest single core performances that you can get. So if I had to err on one side, you can just go for single threaded performance, but get as many of those going together as a multi-core, and then it'll be the best of both worlds. So, and I realize that's the expensive option. So, but other people could comment. All right, so we have 315 Christians from Beaumont, Texas. So glad you could join us today. All right, reading through comments. Thanks for all the great questions from everyone. All right, so we see Matt Elder just says, "You're a lifesaver. Thanks so much." I think it's in relation to the control room question. All right, wonderful to see David M. from Liverpool joining us. I hope you're back. I think you're on vacation last time or holiday, or out, joining us remotely. Okay, just reading through more comments and questions here. Okay, so we see from Harry Olive, He asks, hi Greg, I'd like to create a MIDI track out of an audio drum groove. Want to know where kick, snare, hi-hat are located by timing. If not, can we visible hit points on an audio track in the project window clip? All right, so we'll just add a quick drum loop here, or let me just look for a particular project here. See if it's in. Okay, so so it says I want to create a MIDI track out of an audio drum groove. Want to know where kick, snare, hi-hat are located by timing. If not, can we? Okay, so let's say we have our drum loop here. All right, so I'm going to just go into the sample editor and let's get to the hit points. Okay, so we can see, and we'll just make this, we'll adjust our hit point intensity here. We'll adjust the threshold down a bit. So we can see within the event itself, the hit points. So you see kind of this yellow line in the background within the event itself. Those are the hit points on the audio file. So it says you're going to create a MIDI track out of an audio drum groove. Want to know where the kick, snare, hi-hat are located. So, once you see the hit points, but, once you have the hit points on the event, so, and I found this to work pretty well, is just to click here on create, click on groove, then this gets added as a groove preset, a groove quantized preset, and then any MIDI that you have, you can just kind of drop it in. So let me find, it's a pretty straight loop. Let me just find something maybe with a little more. Let me just check my. All right, so let me just. Let's say that this has more swing to it. All right, and I'm just going to add. Just a quick bass part. All right, and I'll just add a quick pattern. So I'll do just some eighth notes. Okay, so we have just kind of generic bass line with our loops. Let me just find a different patch for that so we can. And I'll make sure that the patch doesn't have any delays on it. All right, and So let's say these aren't necessarily grooving. All right, and just gonna turn off my tempo track here. Okay. All right, so I have this. Let's go ahead and we created kind of the groove quantize preset from the drums earlier. Again, by going into hit points, clicking on the hit points tab. So now when I come over here, we'll just choose that as our groove quantize preset. So I'll hit Q. And we can see that that is so just kind of taking that particular, so it's very straight, and select this as our quantize preset. So as we do this, we can see that those particular MIDI notes have moved. So also what you could do with the hit points is take it into a sampler track. So let's drag this file into a sampler track, create slices, activate that, and we could drag so we'll come here, we'll create our slices, and then we could drag this event into our timeline as well. So now we could have the kind of the MIDI timing extracted from the drum loop, and then we could use that. We could go into our quantize preset here and say, okay, when I want to select this particular MIDI event for my groove quantize, you could just drag it over into the particular event and say, okay, now I want to, so we have this, and I could quantize the notes based, so we could, do it based on slices in the sampler track or within Groove Agent, and then use that as a quantize preset. So let me know if you've tried that, Harry. All right, wonderful to see Peter from Montreal. He says it's a balmy 35 degrees. All right, wonderful to see Benny from Sweden. He just got home from his gig. Thanks for joining us today. Okay, so I got a message from Michael Romanowski, Coastmaster. I should ignore his next question. So if I got the wrong one, Michael, let me know. All right, so we see from Johnny Wishoff, what preset in Omni? So I'm not sure if it's, so the only thing I can think of when you say in Omni mode is maybe with Groove Agent. So let's go to a particular Groove Agent track. So I'm not sure if, there is, when we go to the patterns, you could put this into Omni mode. And this will separate the pattern. So we have MIDI notes that could, on particular kits, that could trigger patterns, or MIDI notes that could trigger individual notes. So the one thing that's Omni to me is on the pattern, that we could choose to have a different MIDI port in case the patterns are overlapping with the note messages. But if I'm misunderstanding, please let me know. But that's the one thing for Omni that comes to mind. All right, Michael Teams wants people to whack the like button. See, Michael Teams mentions he had his bone density scan yesterday, and he still has bones. That's good. It's all the ice cream you have with milk in it. Keeps your bones strong. All right, so maybe the Omnis are maybe like a reference for performance with Omnisphere. All right, so wonderful to see Lucy Godfrey on. Glad you could join us. I believe she's in London area. All right, so we see PZ136 says, who deleted my question? I'm out and upset. So sometimes it's, some questions on the chat don't make it in. So I don't think anyone deleted the question. I saw you kind of check in earlier. But if maybe the question was more than 200 characters or something like that. So if you want to ask your question again, maybe break it into smaller characters, but sometimes the questions just don't make it in for some reason. I don't think anyone intentionally deleted your question, but please feel free to ask it again or send it via email, and I'll keep an eye out for it. All right, so we have a question. Do you know how to play the piano? So if it's directed towards me, I have really bad piano skills. So I did enough to get through class piano in college for my music degree, but I'm not a piano player. I'm sure if I practiced at it that I could be much better, but it's my primary instrument is electric bass and string bass, and I played trumpet all through high school. All right, Lucy Godfrey says one of these days she'll ask a question. We're just glad you made it to the live stream. All right, so we see just a question, can you make me a song? It's a request. So I'm not really like a songwriter per se. Like I'm pretty good at mixing and arranging and producing, but not coming up with the initial idea. So, but maybe someone else is good at songwriting. All right, so we see the Heartbreak Time Machine says, are there like 5 people from NorCal here today? So. And I think Heartbreak Time Machine just reminds me, had a question on the last live stream about how to put a number of tracks into a folder labeled rendered. So, and I was trying to get it going on the last live stream, but I think it was Heartbreak Time Machine if memory serves right. So let's say I want to take these tracks and send them, and let's say these are rendered stems, and I want to send these particular tracks to a folder and have that folder automatically called rendered. I was kind of playing around with it. I was pretty close last time, but I think I got it figured out. So before I forget, we'll just come over here. All right, let me find a preset. I think okay, so what we want to do is to take all of these tracks and move them to a folder and have that folder called rendered, and we could actually have that folder track closed if you wanted to. I just kind of added that. So I set up 2 preconditions. where it was project / folding tracks to folder. So it's going to take all these tracks, put it into a folder, and then we're going to navigate up to basically select the folder track. So I'm starting off with all the tracks I want in the folder selected. And then on we're going to choose transform for our actions. We're going to say we're going to take folder tracks that are selected, and then for the action, we're going to name it and replace the name rendered. And then we're going to close that particular folder. So we'll see all these tracks, if everything works as expected, go into a folder track. It will be named. We'll select a folder track, name it rendered, and then close the folder track on the end. So come here. And now everything was automatically placed into our rendered folder for everything. And I hit the button twice. So all of my 11 tracks will just automatically be placed. So we'll do it one more time here. So select these tracks, run this project logical editor preset, and all of them are now into that particular folder for us. So once again, to do this, we want to set up preconditions for taking these tracks, putting it into a folder, navigating up. Then we're going to take that selected folder, rename it rendered, and close the folder. So this could be optional if you don't want that. So, and again, just come here, click apply, and it'll automatically be executed for you just like that. So let me know if that's helpful for you, for having all the tracks placed into a rendered, a folder track labeled rendered. All right, so we have Easy Keel TV says, can I ask a question? Sure. So yeah, just type your question in, and we're happy to answer it. All right, so we see Neil Conway just saying hello from Arizona from the last time. Okay. All right, so a lot of discussion on different processors. All right, so we see from Forward Thinkers is Greg. What advantages are there to using rack instruments rather than a regular instrument? I guess a regular instrument track. Thanks. So it used to be in the old days that we started with kind of the analogy, because as we started doing VST instruments, people had lots of modules that would sit in a rack, and think of Korg Tritons and JV 1080s and stuff like that. So they would sit in a rack, and we would send MIDI tracks from Cubase to, and instead of going to a MIDI interface to an external device, we would send it to a virtual rack. So it was kind of like a rack of instruments that you could then send MIDI to. This allowed us to have multi-timbral capability, and allowed us to also have multiple outputs on an instrument. So if you had one instrument, you could say, okay, I want a piano on channel 1, a bass on channel 2, drums on channel 10, a saxophone on 8. So you could run multiple instruments within a one multi-timbral instrument coming from different MIDI tracks. But as people who never experienced that particular kind of concept of working and sending MIDI, that came up in kind of the VST era of music production, they wanted a simpler approach because that was a paradigm that wasn't so applicable to their workflow. So that's why we added instrument tracks. So that when we added an instrument track, at that point, it would be just a single stereo output. The the audio portion of the VST instrument was coupled directly in the mixer, so that, and it wasn't multi-timbral. So there was but it was faster and more accessible to start playing an instrument plug-in. So it didn't have to be set up in advance and kind of more thought out in the paradigm of a direct kind of hardware concept replacement. And over time, so historically the differences were that an instrument track could only have a single output, a single stereo out, and wasn't multi-timbral. So now we can add MIDI tracks below an instrument track, and that will automatically increment the MIDI channels and retain the same MIDI port, so that it could, so that it is less of a disadvantage working with an instrument track. So over time, and now instrument tracks can have multiple outputs. So, the real advantage, I think, sometimes is people working where they're hosting different plugins off of different computers running like VE Pro. I think that still works better as an instrument track, and I think it could be just how it works better, but so there's real, so over time, when there was kind of two distinct options of not enough flexibility for multi-outs and multi-timbral with instrument tracks, over time those distinctions have kind of faded away. But we can't necessarily take instrument tracks away from people that have been doing that since 1998. So we still have that paradigm, but we have to kind of gradually evolve other things as well to overcome objections that people would have. So there's it is a bit confusing and a little murky, but it kind of really goes down to kind of historical legacy workflows and being able to maintain those. I tend to work with everything with instrument tracks now myself. So. All right, just reading through comments. All right, we see Uno Momento is going to listen to a Finnish rock band, probably in celebration of summer. Michael Teams is on the ball with ice cream distribution. All right, still. Okay, still discussion on computers, reading through them. A discussion of AMD and Intel. Neil Conway just bring up the Radio Shack TSR 80. That brings back some memories. All right, so my chat field jumped, so I see more discussion going on over computers. Okay, so you see from Mohammed Kamel, music composer, asks, how can I make Badern bass guitar flow chord track like a Ranger keyboard? So if you have a MIDI bass part, so let's come over and just get rid of all these here quickly. Okay, so let me just find a quick. All right, let me just check my control room here quickly. Okay, so let's say I have okay, so let's say we have this playing. So if you want, like, let's add a chord track on top. All right, and we'll just do kind of a circle of fifths here. So let's start with A to E. All right, so let's say we have a chord track, and I have like a MIDI bass part here. And this will really be very similar. So I'm going to now select the track, and we'll go to chord track. And as we do this, let me just so we can see some more data here. We're going to tell it to follow. As soon as we go to this particular event, we'll go to chords and we'll say follow chords and scales. So now as we play back the bass part, and if I just wanted to kind of repeat that pattern, I'll just come here, let's duplicate. So I can just take, now my MIDI will follow based on the chords. And so again, just select the track, go to chords, and tell it to follow the chords, and you could have it just follow chords or do chords and scales. So now if I just have it only play notes within a chord. So, and if I wanted to transpose these chords, I could just come over here. So that's how you could have a like a MIDI bass part follow the chord track. So let me know if that's kind of what you wanted to do. See a comment from Jazz Dude says and just kind of discussion about musicians, and computers being kind of similar mindsets. It says geeks in the late 70s, like check out the history of Cubase and Carl Steinberg. Charlie says yes, he was a musician in a band. Yeah, so it used to be between the two founders, Charlie and Manfred. I think Manfred was kind of like one of the well-known session keyboard players, was kind of the hot keyboard player in town, and Charlie used to be like the audio engineer and producer, and then they heard about this thing called MIDI coming up, and Manfred was worried about being replaced as a session keyboard player, and then Charlie got a book and figured out how to write some code, and hence Steinberg started. All right, so we see Johnny just clarifying that the Omni was about CPU talk, so I can raise that from context now. But thanks for the clarification nonetheless. All right, it's wonderful as always to see you, Mr. Tim Weinheimer from Mission Viejo, California. Glad you can make it today. And for Gerald Ely, says he thinks it was the soundtrack to Forbidden Planet that got him interested in electronic music. All right, so we see the Heartbreak Time Machine saying that was just a question about the taking tracks to the folder name rendered. So hope that was helpful for you. See, Michael Teams is mentioning Larry Fast from Synergy. That was some of my early exposure to kind of electronic music, stealing Synergy records from my cousins. Okay, reading through comments. So lots of great discussion today on computers. Gerald Ely had Roy Schneider introduce him to Tangerine Dream. So yeah, we'll have to see if we get Paul Hasslinger, from former Tangerine Dream member, to be, maybe we have him be a special guest on a Zoom meetup sometime. All right, so David Davis says, I was trying to render 10 tracks at once and Cubase did nothing. I can render 2 to 5 tracks at one time. Is there a limit to how many tracks that can be rendered at once? So there isn't, but sometimes if you're rendering, it could really depend on the selection. If you have like tracks all selected, or if you have a number of, different events that will be just rendered, so it could be like whatever the track selection is. But let's say if I come over here, we'll do just, I'll make this short just so we could see everything here. So I'll just take a small section just for demonstration purposes here. All right, so I'm going to come over here. Let's crop that. All right, so let's say I want to render all these tracks. I'm going to just select these events, and I'll just go ahead and okay, so let's say I have all of these tracks and I'm going to duplicate them again. So we'll just all right, let me make this the active project here first. Okay, now we should be able to duplicate the tracks. Okay, so we have, let's say, 26 tracks. So if I just wanted to render all of these, so let's just do a render in place. So we're just going to render all 26 tracks here. So yeah, there's no real limit. So, but make sure like you didn't have something like tracks and an event selected. That may throw it off. And if you're rendering in place, but yeah, there's no problem rendering more than 10 tracks. I know people render hundreds of tracks at a time. So. See, Michael Pierce says, he loves his Triton, though not a rack one. And I think 90% of Kylie's can't get you out of my head. It was recorded on a Triton. It's coming out of retirement. Yeah, so I think that was all done in Cubase as well. A lot of Triton stuff and all kind of done in Cubase as well. So one of the early, kind of an earlier Cubase hit was probably 2001 or so. See, Heartbreak Time Machine says he remembers racks of synths. So I still have a huge, like 6-foot rack full of synths that all have dying batteries in them. See, Michael Teams is telling Michael Pierce he's looking at a Kurzweil K1000 rack module. All right, wonderful to see Nick on. Glad you can make it today. All right, and we have Club to Breathe checking in from Rio, Brazil. So, said my college roommate just moved back to the States from Brazil. He was in Rio. All right, my Chatfield just jumped. All right. All right, just finding my place after chat jump. All right, so we have a question. Greg would like to know how to find out-of-phase shifting issues in mono, stereo synths, and bass lines. Thanks for helping. So a lot of times when you are looking for, sometimes, phase is what makes stuff that's out of phase can make something sound good. But, there's also a lot of times, let's say if we wanted to take 2 tracks here, let's say our snare track, and let's say we'll take our snares here. And I think we may show this on the last live stream, but go to the inserts, and let's say if we go to supervision, that we could get a sense of like when our snare hits here. But let's say if I so I have like a snare top and bottom playing, and let's say if I just kind of take one of them, and let's say I'll reverse the phase on one of them here, and let's say as it plays, or I'll show it on guitar parts here, be a little easier to visualize. So you want to take like, 2 tracks that are kind of playing against each other. So let's come over. I'm just going to split this stereo track into 2 mono tracks here. So we'll convert. Okay, so now we play these together. And we look at our so when we see kind of like your phase, like the correlation kind of over to the right, we can see the individual frequencies and the phase here. But now if I want to take that track, like one of the tracks, so we can see that this is in good phase. But if I invert the phase, you'll hear how it sounds kind of very mono. And when you look at the metering, you could see kind of like full of body. And this is almost like taking the waveform and turning it sideways. And we can see all these frequencies are good in phase. And if we wanted to flip the phase on the selected channel, all of these frequencies in red. And we see like the phase scope, the typical phase scope when it goes into more horizontal, that is indicating phase issues there. So again, we'll flip the phase or the polarity. I could hear Michael Pierce saying, it's polarity, not phase. It's polarity. So you could see pretty easily on a correlator where it's going to go to the left and in red. So red bad, red out of phase. And those 2 tracks now we'll hear in phase. So solo, different sources, and then you could see what the phase relationship. And sometimes, phase is used in synthesis to make something sound wider or bigger. Like, you put a phaser on it, kind of like adding chorusing to a particular instrument as well. Okay, so we see from Digicode, says, hey Greg, I've just myself my first hardware synth, but it's only a monotimbral. Can you show me how to use a patch change from Cubase 12 Pro? I think it's in the Midi editor, but I can't find it. So with instruments, what you want to do is just come over, and you can do it a couple of ways. One is in the Midi editor, switch this to program change, and then you could say, okay, on this part I want this program change, and I want a program change to switch here. And at this point you could just have program changes set up. Often what people will do, if it's not changing and you just want it to be a particular patch so that every time you call up the song it goes to that patch, is when you select a MIDI track. So add a MIDI track, and then we will see like your MIDI channel here. So we will see your MIDI channel, and then below, let me just add, I'll switch it to a different, we'll say not connected. So here you're going to have your bank message and your program change. So if you wanted to play back, you know, so your MIDI track is going to be going out, and at this point you could just scroll right through here, and this will send program changes to your particular instrument. So right there, that will just send a program change, and then you know, you could embed that in if you wanted to, or just kind of leave this value set so that every time you go to this song, it would play back this particular sound. So you may have 128 program changes, and then you could also have 128 banks. There's kind of different discrepancies in the MIDI specification. So you may find that the bank changes aren't going to, you know, if you don't have them respond to bank 1, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, it could be intervals of 128. So maybe bank 128, bank 384, bank, you know, 512, 768, 1024, you know. So, but you could just come over here and just do your bank and program changes on your MIDI track right there. So, and congratulations on your first hardware synth, and you know, let us know what you got. So, it's always fun. I remember getting my first hardware synth by like 1989 or so. Got into it late. Okay, reading through a lot of great concepts. You see, Michael Teams just on Nick that we did give away a Neve console, but he got 1 gallon of strawberry ice cream. That's what you get for being late. So. Okay, reading through comments. All right, lots of great discussion today. All right, a lot of discussion on music tastes. Going through all the comments here. All right, still reading through comments. All right, a lot of great discussion today. Nick is just asking if anyone has Spectral Layers 10 yet. So. See Michael Pierce just saying, sorry, you got schooled hard on a polarity phase thing. still reading through comments. All right, so we see Nick just asking, Greg, do you have Spectral Layers 10 installed yet? So yeah, I do. We'll take a quick look at it. So I think one of the things that you'll notice is that like the algorithms have improved for like extraction. So we'll come over and let me just import a quick audio track here. Like I was trying to recover something. We'll start with this. So let's say we have like an interview. So, you know, Spectral Layers 10, it just came out with a new version. It has a lot of like pretty amazing AI stuff. So, but let's come over here and say.
So Scott Dixon joining
like,
us now.
Just like and, kind of a radio.
This is Mario Andrew. How's AJ? That you laid down on Sunday. And
very privileged for one to be.
So say an interview with two different people. So there's a couple like pretty amazing things we could do with this. So we see that this is all one audio file. It's a stereo file. But if we go to Spectral Layers, we can now come over and say, okay, we'll load in the kind of a large audio file here. And I want to go to Unmix, and we could say, let's come over here and we'll say, let's unmix multiple voices. So I'm going to say there's two people in this interview. I'll hit OK. And this will do like pretty scary artificial intelligence and actually take the two different speakers and put them into different layers as we work with this. So again, I often make the analogy, this is like taking the egg out of the cake and putting it back in the shell after you made the cake with the egg. Just let it do its thing. Pick probably like a 20-minute audio file or so. Yeah, 14 minutes here. All right, let it do its number crunching here. All right, about 70% done. So again, what this is going to do is take, if you have multiple people in an interview and you want to kind of edit them individually, but maybe they're kind of overlapping each other. And I've had to do this kind of manually, where you hope the two people don't talk over top of each other. So you can put them on different tracks, maybe do different processing if they're using different microphones, which is pretty typical. So this is, I think, just an interview we got. I was doing a training at ESPN. All right, so now we could look at our two different layers. So I'm going to drag in voice 1 here. All right, And then we have voice 2. So as we play this now, we could just say, okay.
Sebastian Bourdais, Dario, and you. The only person above you on that list now is AJ.
You know, it's still a tough one,
and
right?
So
like,
I asked
you
you
know,
that question, Victor Lane, and you
for
said
one, I don't really
it's a
like
little too soon to think about
talk
that.
about
Have you had a
myself
chance to
too
think
much.
about
All right, let me just probably put that back to where it was.
It's
So
a little too soon to think about
talk
that.
about
Have you had a
myself
chance to
too
think
much,
about the
but
history
you know, I feel
that
very
you laid down
privileged.
on Sunday? So Scott Dixon joining us now, and this is I said now is AJ.
You know, it's still
7.
a tough one,
And
right?
So I
like,
asked
you know,
that question,
it's,
Victor.
So-
I think is fantastic.
and then as we
but
go
yeah,
here, this
you
is
know,
the
I feel very
interviewee.
But walk us through that race a little
Interviewer.
bit.
you know, just to you know, talk about Justin and remember Justin. So you know,
And as
going
we're
into
going
the
along
next
here-
caution, when I saw, you know, the different races,
And
you know,
to
that
go
that
through an
played
entire
out, and you
season,
know,
and
Iowa
then
was
to have
a
to do the
classic one. You know,
tiebreaker
Iowa we
at the end, which we were.
So this way you could actually, you know, do some, you know, pretty wonderful stuff with that. There's also a new thing where we could come over and do transcription. So say we could do this in 9 different languages, and we'll just hit OK. And we'll take this particular file, and now as we kind of zoom in, and let me just. And then if you wanted to just, like, as you do editing, usually you kind of see it on the bottom. But you could also just kind of come over, so you could do different transcriptions. But what I think is like really exciting is the ability to do extractions more accurately. So I'll just put in a quick file here. Okay, so we'll go ahead and just listen to this just to get some reference of the track. Here, I'll just do it on a new project here quickly. Okay, so let's go ahead and just listen to it. So not only now do we have like some other components for that, but let's say, okay, let's do spectral layers. So before we could do like, we've added the capability of including guitars. So let's come over to our level. So we'll say, let's go to our unmixed song. So now there's a guitar track. We could do bass, drums, piano, and other. Let me see, it's going to take a little shorter just because it's shorter file. And you could also take, like, as it breaks it down into different layers, each layer could be normalized as well, independently. So if you want to bring up the volume on one particular layer, you could actually normalize the content. you see, while we're doing this, Brian Wayner just asked, can we ask general questions in the chat? So certainly. So again, what this is going to do is to unmix the different components. So we saw earlier that we could take drums and isolate the kick and snare and cymbals. That we could also take our different, now we have the added capability of doing guitars as part of the unmixing of song and different elements. So we'll just play this example here. So, and this is doing like really intensive processing using artificial intelligence to accomplish all these different tasks. It's pretty scary stuff. All right, just about 80% done. Okay, just about done here. Okay, so as we play this, so let's just take the vocals out, take the drums out, take the guitar out, mute the bass. And then there's other layers. So if you want to just see some of the other components that weren't really assigned to a particular instrument and non-musical. So you can see there's a lot of wonderful algorithms for being able to unmix stuff intelligently with Spectral Layers 10. So let's see. Just see Michael Pierce is saying Mercy Me Spectral Layers is becoming quite slightly scary. Transcription. See, yeah, I think let me just import a video file when I was playing with. Let's see, I think this video may have some
cultural attractions and activities that this stimulating metropolis has to offer by night. First,
all right, so say we have like this YouTube
1980s
video
and
on
located
Steinberg.
today in the center of town in one of Hamburg's monumental.
All right, so let's do a transcription on this. Let's see if I get it to work quickly here. So it's just a typical corporate video type thing, and I've had to sit here and do transcriptions of like artist interview videos, which is always a nightmare and absolutely no fun to do. So we'll just take a look at just a transcription. And again, this could be in up to 9 different languages. All right, about 80% done. Just trying to remember, but let's say if we go to, so we could kind of see the transcription here. So
For music and audio technology, and all working together to develop the best and most creative tools for musicians, composers, and producers.
and this could be exported, and we could also see it. There's a way to see it kind of under, like, layered here. I'm just having a brain cramp with that, but you could actually see it on. So we could see kind of the text here. So we could say
Producers.
So I'll make this just a little smaller just so we could navigate this around. So we can see kind of the transcription here at the bottom as we go.
Producers. For all of us, working at Steinberg is not simply a day job. This is what we all
And then if you
love
wanted to
do.
edit the transcription,
It's our vocation, and as a team, we can turn any idea, any concept, into reality. Of course, everybody needs a work-life balance. But when
so if you wanted to go to a particular part of the dialogue, you could actually just double click
music is your passion, of
and
course,
see the
everybody
text
needs a
underneath
work-life
there. So yeah, it is getting a little scary what you can do with Spectral Layers. So wonderful update. So if you're interested, consider jumping up. Just came out yesterday. Okay, let's go back through comments. All right. Sable Winter binge listened to Hot Mess last night. So that's great to hear. All right, so we see Digicode got a Novation Peak, but he now has the bug, and he wants to get a Sequential Pro 3 and a Prophet X. See, Benny already has Spectral Layers 10, so saying super nice. You see, Nick just says, I mean, you're welcome to sponsor me, Steinberg, but even if you don't, Spectral Layers is awesome. So we'll have to do another giveaway, but you're so good at all of our raffle questions and trivia questions, so we'll have to. So you've done very well with your trivia knowledge of live stream trivia. All right, wonderful to see Randy Lee on, as well as Daniela Tokan. Thanks for joining. All right, wonderful to see Graham Witcher on the live stream from Royal Wooten Bassett. See, Johnny Wishop says the new Spectral Layers is pure magic. I remember saying that. What it does was impossible some years ago. Well, Steinberg proved me wrong. Yeah, so Robin, the chief Spectral Layers developer, just does amazing work. So it's really exciting to see the technology advance so quickly. Kudos to him. All right, so you see, so I just see from Bryant Wayner, can we ask general questions in his chat? So, yeah, just simply ask. Not sure if I missed a question. If not, okay. So we see Bryant's questions. I recently got a Hydra 8 for a guitar VST. I'm told that when you load Myrtle copies, maybe multiple copies of the same sample library into the same instance of Contact, it will pull from the same pool of samples so it does not increase the load on the RAM. Would like to know, so that I have 4 tracks of guitar, rhythm, lead, solo, clean, routed to control for instances of Hydra, and Bennett outputs them to 4 different tracks. So you have multiple copies of the same sample library into the same instance of Contact. It will pull from the same pool. So I believe that it will pull. I'm not a Contact expert, but I believe Halion would do that. So the same samples would be pulling. It may, so if you have like the same samples across multiple MIDI tracks, I don't have enough experience with Contact to say for certain, but I believe that it wouldn't require more memory. It may require, I don't think it's going, if you loaded up 4 instances, the initial attacks of the samples will be loaded into memory and the rest of it streams. So it may increase the memory, but it may not have a significant impact on the memory, and it's probably adjustable. So I don't think with the memory, and you may have more voices accessing the samples. So if you have a slow hard disk, the throughput may be increased, when you're playing more samples, but I think it's going to be pretty negligible overall, Bryant. All right, and then Bryant just says, could you walk us through doing something like that, or can you suggest a guide so I can learn how to do it? So again, I'm not, I don't have a license of Contact, but if we come over and let's come over to an instrument track. Now, one of the things that could have an impact, so when we go to your instrument tracks, let's say we go to Halion 7, and I want to load up like a synth patch. Now, it could also determine, I think Contact is mostly sample based, and I'm not sure if it has like a synthesis engine per se, like Halion does. But let's say if I just come and, you know, we play this. All right, so if we, you know, duplicate this onto, you know, 4 track, let me just choose a, I'll choose a sample here real quick. Okay, so let me just choose sample-based instruments. Okay, so let's say we'll do like T guitar here. All right, so we'll go ahead and let's see if we go to the options and see how much like memory it's going to be utilizing. So we'll go to our options. Okay, so our max preload. So we have our used preload is 327 megabytes here. I'm going to just jump and we'll go to more T guitar. So you can see that the preload amount may increase with that. So if I want to, we'll select our T guitar again. And as I drag this over, and if we keep dragging it over, looks like the preload amount, the used preload is going to be similar. But let's see what our virtual memory is. So I'm going to, we'll look at these statistics here. So let me just cut the program. So we see 949 for virtual. Physical memory. This could be 29.43 or 29.49, so I'll cut the program. So I think that it would behave similarly in Contact. Again, I'm not a Contact person, but at least in Halion, it doesn't seem to be adding more preload memory when loading multiple instances, but Contact may work differently. So you may have to, you know, and maybe someone else who works with Contact more than I do could share some knowledge on it. But you can see it's, you know, anytime that you load, you know, samples in, the initial attacks generally will be loaded into RAM, and that could take some more processing capabilities. And I guess the time code marker for this would be like about 2 hours and 40 minutes. So we see Jazz Dude, and he just says like CIA, FBI, NSA, and so on. They're going to like Spectral Layers 10. So yeah, they they like WaveLab a lot, I can tell you that. So. All right, so Daniela just says, is Spectral Layers able as a VST plugin? So it runs as not necessarily a plugin, but it runs as an ARA2 extension, which is kind of more appropriate for how it gets information back and forth into different editing environments. So it'll kind of run as a plugin, but as an ARA extension. So. All right, Mr. Bob asks, after installing Spectral Layers 10, Spectral Layers 9 is still installed. Do I uninstall or leave it alone? So I think the program itself is pretty small. I would leave it alone just in case you need it for some compatibility. But Spectral Layers 10 would have all the functions in Spectral Layers 9. You could have Spectral Layers 9 to compare results on processing if you wanted to, but it's not necessary to keep it. But you can, and it's not a huge program space-wise. All right, so wonderful to see Best Korean Jesus. Glad to see you back on the live stream. Hope you're well. All right, so we see from Johnny Wishoff says, have you guys experienced Stream Deck for Cubase? Seems like a nice tool. So, yeah, I did a whole bunch of work with my Stream Deck, kind of getting it configured for Cubase, and I found it worked well. The one thing that I found was kind of annoying on mine, I have like the larger one, is it had to be plugged directly into the computer. It can't run connected to a USB hub, so that was kind of an annoyance to me if you have lots of, if you have like 2 or 3 things going on your USB bus, but if you have like 20 things like I have connected to my computer, it was kind of annoying to have to use a dedicated USB connection to the computer. But other than that, I think it works well. I think the software to get everything configured and set up, like you can't say take these 16 pads or these 32 pads and change it all to this background, change it to this. You have to do each pad kind of individually, which was kind of a bummer, but it works well, and you could really custom configure stuff how you want. All right, so we have Rouge Green saying hi from the UK. Thanks for joining us. All right, so we see Michael Pierce just says, wow, this could be amazing for YouTube, etc. .srt file, so I think it's like the script file. So yeah. All right, so Steve Allen says, been using Spectral Layers 10 today. Guitars at last. Paid for itself already. So that's great. Wonderful to see you on the live stream, Steve. All right, so we see from Brian Sawyer says, setting up VST Connect. I can get the cameras going, but not the audio. Is there something special that needs to be done? So make sure, like, when you have it set up, so let's say if we're doing like a VST Connect, we'll just come over here, and I don't have my secondary computer set, but you could always choose to check and repair configurations. But so we'll say we'll start here. And you want to make sure that you have the audio from your particular system here. So let's say as we have this, it's going to be routed into the control room. So when we go to our control room, it's going to actually put, so you make sure that you have your control room set up, and you may see the inserts for the VST Connect, and it'll utilize the control room, and that's what you need to have to send the audio is through the control room. So make sure that you have the control room kind of configured as well. So, and let me know, Brian, if it's whether they're not hearing the audio or you're not hearing the audio coming in. All right, and Brian Sawyer Sr. asks, also, what is the main difference between VST Connect SE and Pro? So the Pro version allows you to record MIDI information and allows you to record up to 16 tracks of audio, whereas regular VST Connect SE, or the starter edition, allows you to record 2 channels. So if you're recording 16 channels, let's say like a large drum setup, and let's say the internet bandwidth isn't fast enough, it'll actually keep local files on the person's computer, and those local files can then be transmitted in the background so that the full resolution files can then just be accessed and sent over the same connection. So those are a couple of the big differences. Also, VST Connect Pro allows you to, if you're running it on the same network, like let's say you have 2 or 3 studios that are all running on the same network, you could record over the same network with the same IP, like the same IP address, so that you could record like within an intranet, so that you could have different systems just set up to record over your network internally. So those are a couple of things. Okay, so we see from Bryant Wayner, how would I route that in Halion? So for instance, 4 different MIDI tracks into Halion, then out to separate channels for mixing. All right, so let's say we have our Halion set up here. Okay, so let's say I'm just going to load up Okay, so I will have like the same sound here. In Halion, we can see that these are all MIDI channels A1 through A4, so we have that set up. We can just go to the output and say, okay, I want this going out of out 2, out 3, out 4, out 5. All right, so I have my Halion instance here. I want to add 3 MIDI tracks. All right, so this is going to this instrument here. I go to this instrument is playing. I select this, it's being sent to this instrument. Now, if you want to have, so right now all MIDI channels, like if you're doing a guitar controller or like a controller that's outputting multiple MIDI channels, and you wanted to dedicate it to particular channels here, you could go to the input transformer right here on version 12. In version 11 and earlier is kind of like a little squiggly line. Go to the input transformer, and we can say, okay, I want this for the track. We'll open the panel, and you'll see preferences. So if you only wanted MIDI channel 1 to go to this track and only MIDI channel 2 to this one, channel 3, channel 4, and filter out other channels, we could go to, and there's presets for under factory for channel filtering. So you can say pass MIDI channel 1 here. Let's go to this channel and let's open up, we'll say for the track, and we'll open the panel here, and we want this to, again, we'll say channel filtering. So this is only going to pass channel 2, and we can do channel 3, channel 4 in the same manners here. And that way, if you have like a multi-timbral controller, only channel 1 goes to this voice, only channel 2 goes to this, channel 3 goes here, channel 4 goes there. So, and then each of these goes to its different output that we could see in the mix console as well. So we see our Halion outputs just being fed right there. So let me know if that helps, Bryant. All right, so we have Digicode asks, on FX Modulator, when using the frequency shifter, affect the window resolution is at 1000%. Is there a way to lower that value, as I only want to make the maximum value 10%? So I think it's going to be fixed, but let's take a look and just make sure. Okay, so let me see if it's the pitch or the frequency shifter. Okay. Yes, I don't think that there's a way to kind of resize the scale of this. But, you know, if you wanted to put in a specific point, I think if you select a point, but yeah, I don't think that there's a way of adjusting kind of the scale. But if you, let's see, sometimes, yes, I don't think that this scale is adjustable. But I could play around with this some more over the weekend if you want to email me at clubcubase@steinberg.de. See, Best Screen Jesus says, I want to hear the WaveLab and CIA story. So I have a good one I just can't talk about in public, but but it's used for a lot of kind of investigational audio stuff. It's interesting. If you go to like in Washington D.C., like people that do like sonar research on naval submarines, like there are a bunch of WaveLab users there that do sonar analysis. In WaveLab, there's people who do it for medical reasons, for measuring accelerometers. They often output in WAV files for some interesting reason. A lot of investigational audio, Library of Congress. So lots of stuff for kind of forensic audio and audio restoration and audio preservation done in WaveLab. So. But I could tell you one story. It's like when I did some like audio restoration work for a lawyer in Baltimore. I think his name is Billy Martin. And I just went up and showed him some stuff, and all of a sudden it was I just like, and he had like a little kind of micro cassette recorder that he had in his sport coat pocket, and he recorded a meeting, and I cleaned it up, and I didn't really listen to it, but did all the cleaning up in WaveLab. And then and he's like, people may follow you. I'm like, well, what is this? It's kind of strange, but he gave me a nice check, so I was happy. And ended up he was the attorney for the boxing promoter Don King, And this was for a lawsuit. It was this business recording meeting that I did the audio restoration for, which seemed cool, and I liked the check and everything until I got subpoenaed and had to go to court, federal court in New York, to testify how I was able to achieve this miraculous result. And ends up that the expert witness was the former audio forensic audio person for the FBI, and he's like, "Oh, we love WaveLab. It's great," you know. So interesting. So I could share. That's a WaveLab story I could share. All right. All right, so you see from Brian Sawyer that just can't hear audio from the other end. Could get the click track to come out the wrong place in remote, but not through the headphones. So let me see. I think I may have a project that we could open up here, so we could see some of the routing. All right, so like as we do this, let's say if I wanted to send out this particular track, you know, I would make sure that it's going out to the Q mix, and one of the Q mixes here, this will be set up. Let me just one of the Q mixes will be set up, so you know, make sure that you have this going out to the Q mix, and that would allow the person to hear. And then when you're recording that person, you just want to make sure that the input is set for VST Connect. And if you know, one of the things that you could do to kind of clean up a lot of the different aspects is, if you're here, just get to your VST Connect SE. And under VST Cloud, and at this point you could check and repair configurations, and that will often kind of fix different aspects of it for you. So, but on Tuesday I could have kind of my secondary computer set up, and we could go through it, Brian, if you want to see it. If we're still having problems, send me an email to clubcubase@steinberg.de. All right, so Bryant Wayner just says, so pumped for this. I'm so happy you switched to Cubase last year. So we're happy to have you as a Cubase user. Thanks for being on the live stream. So we see a question. Hi, Greg. Could you possibly share your Stream Deck profile for Cubase/Nuendo? Yeah, if you want to send me an email to clubcubase@steinberg.de, I'll go through and clean up a couple things. But what I basically did, and I have it set up with the Midi remote, and I just went through like every single menu function and went through every single menu and have all those kind of mapped out to Stream Deck. But I'd be happy to share it if you want to send me an email to clubcubase@steinberg.de. And if Jazz Dude wants to send an email, I'd be happy to kind of share it there as well. All right, so we see Johnny Wishoff says, by the way, Greg, encountered a limiter some days ago. His question is, I wanted my kick to be sidechained to more than 8 places, but that's the limit. Do you know, or can you ask why there is such a limitation? I guess you could probably send it to a group, but let's add, let me just add like 10 audio tracks. Okay. so I'll come. I saw an email from Brian come in, so. So there's 11 inputs for the sidechain. So let me just it says I encountered the limiter some days ago. I wanted my kick to be sidechained by more than 8 places, but that's the limit. Do you know, or you can ask why there is that limitation? So it looks like I just did, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. I just did 11 inputs for the sidechain, so I'm not sure if, so it looks like it's maybe not a limitation. So it looks like everything sidechained more than 8. But let me know if I did it differently than you did, Johnny. All right, so Bryant Wayner just says, I'm still new to Cubase. Can I sync Dorico to Cubase to input scores? Does it have that kind of workflow? So currently the two, Dorico doesn't synchronize to anything else. I think we'll see as the future goes. I think, they've announced, intentions to kind of have more of a married workflow between the two applications. But, Dorico doesn't synchronize to anything currently. So unfortunately, no. All right, so you see Best Green Jesus just says mind-blowing, so that's good. I feel like I did my job now. We impressed Best Green Jesus. So. All right, so Benny asks, Greg, what Stream Deck do you have? So I think it's the 32-button one, like the Stream Deck XL I got a couple years ago. See, Best Green Jesus just says, thank you, I would have never guessed. So it's probably made with the stories. So Gerald says, so even the FBI listens to Greg. So it's probably Greg Lukens, who's sold a lot of WaveLab to government facilities when he worked at Washington Professional Systems. All right, Michael Teams wants people to smash the like button. See, Lucy says, cool story about the subpoena. Yeah, it's always great to get a really angry knock on your door at like 12:30 at night when I think I just came back from a trip to Chicago and got back. So then it's like, oh, you have to go tomorrow. Get on a plane. Okay, so we see Michael Pierce just adds, but you can't sidechain more than 8 other sources from a single kick channel. I mean, you can, but you have to get a little fiddly. So, all right, so let's give it a try here. So, all right, so I'll just blow all these out here real quick. Let me remove. Sorry, let me just remove these channels quickly here. All right, so let's try the other way around, as Michael Pierce mentioned. Okay, so let me just see how many. All right, so say we want to take this. So I think why you may have a limitation of 8 is because it's using the sends to do it. So let's say if I come over and we'll call this kick. So as I add a sidechain here, we'll see that that's the sidechain there. We'll add our sidechain to this one. So I think just the sends get full. And that's why it. And that's why it's 8. So I guess you could send it to a group and then feed the side and feed 8 more that way. So let's just go ahead and check. So you can see that as you get this full, that there's no more sends to utilize for that. All right, so we'll come. Okay, so now we look at our kick. We can see that we have 2 more. All right, so let's say this one I want to create a group channel. So I'm going to send this track, or I'll just add a group channel below. So we'll add a group, and we'll call it kick group. All right, so I want this track to now feed my kick group. And then let's go to this, and we'll say sidechain input kick group. So if you need more, if you need that kick to, you know, feed another, so we could just use that group for another 8 channels and fill up all the sends there for sidechaining. So, you know, you could also use direct routing as well. So, but, you know, so it looks like it's just if you want to have a kick be a sidechain for more than 8 instruments, just create a group and then use that group to feed the sidechain for additional instruments, or utilize direct outputs. So if you have multiple groups, we could activate, just come over here and feed different groups directly from the direct outputs as well. So you could have, let's say 8, and then each of these could, you know, feed more. So it should give you like 40 or 50. Okay, so we see Grant Nicholas on from Baltimore. He's late to the party because he's doing a VST remote from London to Baltimore. All right. All right, so we see. Hi, Greg. Did you ever hear back from the devs regarding all the instrument samples on an external drive, but not connected when starting Cubendo? Those pop-ups are really annoying. So I think that sometimes I mentioned it to him. I haven't heard. I think it was a while ago that I brought it to their attention, and they're familiar with it. But I will bring it to their attention again. Usually the answer I kind of get is, you should maybe connect the drive to it. And I know that some instruments, will, as it's kind of looking to make sure that the instruments can be used or not, you could get a warning message. But I haven't heard much about it, but I'll bring it to their attention again. Benny just asked, Greg, can you email your presets on it? So yeah, I'll spend some time getting it kind of polished up if this is for the Stream Deck. But yeah, if you want to email me at clubcubase at Steinberg, at steinberg.de. Again, clubcubase at steinberg.de. All right, looks like Michael Team's YouTube just glitched. So hope everything's okay. All right, so Sable Winters asks, I bought an upgrade to Spectral Layers 9 in May. Should I get a complimentary upgrade to 10? So usually it's within a month. So if it was like, May 20th, check to see when it was in May, but it's usually like 30 days back or like a month back from release of a new, release. So it usually goes back 1 month for the upgrades. So let me know when you bought it in May, and I could take a look. If you want to email me, I could look to see what the exact grace period date was. I think Nick's saying anything after May 23rd. Jenny Wishoff just comments that Sidechain is a very useful tool no matter the age. So. All right. Okay. Michael Pierce just says, I got to find out who needs more than 8 kick sidechains, though. So, and Nick it's a good suggestion from Nick that it's probably going to be the cowbell player. So. Okay, so you see Michael Pierce says, actually, one little thing, the default window which opens when you load Cubase, I'm sure that used to close with just a press of the escape key. I don't think it does it anymore. Can we change that? So let me open up Elements quickly, and we'll see. I think I have Elements on here, so I don't have to close out of Cubase here. So I'm not sure if it's the hub that you're talking about. So if it's this one, so it looked like Escape just closed it for me. But so let me know, but like when I just did it on Cubase Elements, that the Escape closed it for me. I never tried that before, but it looks like it did on Elements. I'll check it out when I reboot my Cubase Pro and see if that does it. But let me know if it's the hub screen that you're talking about, Michael. See, Johnny Wishop just says, Greg, I would advise when you speak with developers to add more sends. Just again, why limit 8? So I'll mention it to the planning team. I don't think we have a lot of people that utilize more than 8, but there's also, again, other ways to route the audio with direct routing. Groups, I think, are easy enough, and a lot of people in other programs may not utilize that because it's not delay compensated, but that's not necessarily the case in Cubase. It does all the delay compensation, but I'll make sure to mention it. All right, so I'm going to go to some of the questions that were mailed in. Thanks for all the great questions from everyone. I think we answered some of the questions already, but all right, so we had a question. How can I see large chords when recording MIDI data in the key editor? Okay, so let's just set this up. Okay, so I'm going to add a chord track. And let's add an instrument track. Okay, so let's say now. All right, so one way that I was thinking that we could do this to make it larger so that as we are working, I'm just going to record enable the chord track as well. And let's set just an event. I'm going to create an event here. We'll double click. And let's go to like our editor. And I'm going to utilize the chord track from the global tracks. And then make sure that we have this open. And as we hit record, we just... So now when I hit record, so if I just want to, yeah, I'll just set it to follow. So now we could just record the MIDI data. And see large chords as well. So that way we can record, see the chords while you're recording and have it populate the chord track. And if you have an existing chord track, right, all you'd have to do is just go to a new version for the chord track, and then you could just start fresh with that. So that's one way of seeing chords, large chords in the MIDI key editor. So if, again, just place them both into record, and when we go to like the standalone editor, you can make the chord track very large just by enabling global tracks and turning the chord track on and off and resizing as needed. Okay, so we had a question on how to do like note repeat on hi-hats. All right, so I'm going to add just a quick drum part here. So let's say we'll do Groove Agent SE. Okay, so let's say I want to play, like, have note repeats on a hi-hat with a drum loop going on. So I'll just come over. Okay, so I'll just drag this loop over. All right, this is our new Genius hit song, and all right, so as we play, so I want to throw in like some hi-hat note repeats here, so I'll just make this a little louder. All right, so one of the things that we could do is a couple of different ways, but if you wanted to just do it on a single note, all right, so I just want to do it on a hi-hat, what we could do is just go to the MIDI inserts, and we could choose to do just the arpeggi, okay? And here I can put in note repeats. We could adjust this step size here. And if I wanted to automate that, what I could do is, let's go to our MIDI remote. So I'm going to set this up where we're going to have like quick controls. So as I adjust a particular parameter, I want this quick control knob to control. So I'll just come here. Let's make sure that this is set for quick controls. Alright, let me see if I'll just try on my. Alright, so I'll just do my focus quick controls here on this. Alright, so what I want to do is to assign this parameter to my step size. So, and how we do that is, for this particular track, we go to our quick controls, and we can say, okay, I want to just come over here to MIDI channel. Let's see if it's under MIDI channel. And then we'll go to insert 1. We go to our inserts and we say arpeggi. And now I want to set the step size. So as I adjust this, we can play. I'm going to just trigger. And if we want to record the output of this particular MIDI insert, I could just come right over here. And I'm going to, let's say, as we play, I could put this track into record. So now I'll hit the. And now as we play back, we could look at my fine composition here, and we'll play it back. So you could do stuff like that using kind of the arpeggiators. Since I'm just playing to one single note, we could just have that, you know, instead of arpeggiating the chord, just have that arpeggiate just the hi-hat, just like that. And now if we just turn this off, that will play back, and we could program other drums underneath. Since we have recorded that particular data into the track itself. So if we want to look at this in like the drum editor, and have it follow. So that's an easy way of kind of doing like quick note repeats for hi-hats. All right, so we see a question. Hi, Greg. Is it possible to transfer frequency curve from Cubase frequency plugin to EQ and channel strip? The number of bands are used in frequency is uninteresting. It's the frequency curve itself. Shall be transferred to the channel strip EQ. May well be a simplified translation of the EQ curve. The rest I can tweak manually. Okay, so I don't think that it's going to directly carry over. But let's take a look at the two. So let's come over, just add an audio track, and let's open up the inserts. And we will go to frequency. Okay, and we'll open up our channel strip as well. So, you know, there are two different plugins. So I think that as we make an adjustment here, so let's say we go to 5K, I wanted to do a Q of 8.2, and we'll come here and just have that be 2.6 dB. All right, so let's say if I want to go to 5,000, I think it's going to have to and let's choose our Q of 8.2 and activate. So you could, you know, there isn't a way to kind of take these parameters and have it correlate. You'd have to kind of manually put them in because they are two different plugins. So there isn't a direct correlation there. But let's say if I take this band and, you know, let's say 4,000, say 4K, and I want to drop it -12. So you'd have to set this up. So say let's make this Q of 8.2. Sorry. So there isn't kind of a direct way to take these particular parameters and drop them in, but you'd have to kind of manually do it. But it's really 3 steps to kind of do. So sorry about that. All right, let's go back to some of the live questions. Thanks for all the questions that were sent in as well. All right, so let me just read through comments here. All right, so we see Eric Fox. Why is there no Spectral Layers 1.10 for Cubase? So I think when Spectral Layers 1 came out with the last iteration, that it actually came out like a month or two afterwards. So, there currently isn't a Spectral Layers 1 version with version 10. So it just came out yesterday. So it usually takes a little while. Obviously when you come out with a new program, you want to realize revenue because it takes a lot of time to develop and to market and test and come up with all the AI algorithms. So, they want to encourage people to buy the program. So there probably will be a Spectral Layers 1 in the future, but it was, I don't think that Steinberg has promised a Spectral Layers 1 version 10. But I think we'll see it in the future, but it has never come out on the same day as release. So. All right. Let's see. Jazz Dude just says he bets it'll come out in Cubase 13. All right. So I think I'm at the end of questions. We'll see if there's any other questions that sneak in. If not, we can wrap up a little bit early. I want to thank everyone for all the wonderful questions that they have sent in and asked. Hope that everyone's learned a new tip or trick. And if you've learned something new, make sure you do hit the like button. And that enables us to continue to offer this as a service. And once again, let me know, our next Friday, a week from today, will be our Zoom meetup. So look forward to meeting new people and seeing old familiar friends on the Zoom meetup. So usually what happens on that day is the first we go for about 2 hours and then have a Zoom meetup, and it's kind of more of a social thing. We get to have different people. And the following Tuesday, we usually would be the 4th of July, which is in the United States, a holiday. So let me know if you want to do the clinic on or your 4th of July, which is the Tuesday. Let me know if you want to do the clinic. If you want to do that clinic on the live stream, rather, on Monday, July 3rd, if that makes sense, so we can get 2 live streams in for the week. So, okay, so I see Sable just said she sent an email and an upgrade. So I'll check that out right after the live stream. Thanks for sending that. So let me know if Monday, July 3rd works well. For everyone. Just want to make sure that we don't miss a live stream just because of the holiday. So okay, so we see Michael Pierce looking forward to the Zoom meetup, and he's going to share, I think, photos of Scotland. So we look forward to seeing that. I enjoy watching people's vacation photos and traveling vicariously through them. So. Okay, so we see Michael Pierce says definitely do it on the 3rd. Okay, so we see, is there any place to find out what content is included in the Halion Sonic content? Okay, so let's see if we can take a quick look. Let's see if we can find out in the Steinberg Download Assistant. All right, so it seems like the 3rd is okay for everyone else. I'm sure I'll be like the only American working on Monday the 3rd with a holiday on Tuesday, but oh well. Okay, so let's get to our VST instruments and plugins and see. I think you can see I know it's kind of, sometimes you get it, you see the Halion content set, but it doesn't show which libraries are included. But let's see if there's a breakdown of the different. Yeah, it doesn't show the actual which particular libraries they are, but I'd be happy to see if I could find the answer if you want to email me at clubcubase@steinberg.de. Okay, so we see Jazz Dude has posted a link to the Halion Sonic 7 content. All right, so Robert asks, does Cubendo have any DM3/7 integration? So it does. So you could record over, you could record to it, you could record from the console via USB. I think it's 32 channels via USB. So if you have the DM7, you may exceed that depending how many channels you want. And they could both be used as control surfaces for Cubase. So DM3 is a really nice little Swiss Army knife, so you could use it as a control surface, a front-end digital console, as well as capabilities for mixing and doing headphone mixes, everything from the console, so you could record directly from it as well, and it works basically as kind of like a Mackie control. So, all right, so we see John Costigan says, thanks, Greg, and everyone in Cubase Zone. He learned a bunch. All right, we'll see. There's usually about 30 seconds from when I talk to when you guys hear me. We'll see if there's any more questions that come in. If not, we'll go ahead and wrap up. Thanks for all the wonderful questions and for spending part of your morning, afternoon, evening, or middle of the night with us learning more about Cubase. We want everyone to be better Cubase users, and we appreciate all the wonderful questions and community, and look forward to seeing everyone on the Zoom meetup and hopefully meeting some new faces and some new people on next Friday's Zoom. Okay, so I guess with that, we will go ahead and wrap up. There's no more questions. Thank you so much for all the great questions, and we will see everyone on Tuesday. Take care, and everyone please stay safe and healthy, and we'll see you on Tuesday. Goodbye.